What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Raj Report. It's time to talk about the Toronto Raptors. There are a lot of trade rumors regarding Og Anunoby and Pascal Siakam and different teams involved. We also have to talk about a player that was waived today by the Memphis Grizzlies and whether or not the Toronto Raptors should target him. So if you're going to watch this video, guys, make sure to give this a thumbs up. If you wish to hit the subscribe button as well, that'd be very much appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. And as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs on my channel, and the shout out for today's video goes out to Julien Riviere. Julien, thank you so much for supporting this channel, to your likes and comments. It is very much appreciated. Now let's talk about this rumor that came out yesterday talking about the Indiana Pacers and the Sacramento Kings, and it was being reported by the trade deadline. The Pacers and Kings appear more vested in the possibility of landing Og Anunoby than Pascal Siakam. This was being reported by Jake Fisher. Now, this should not really come as a surprise when you take a look at the Indiana Pacers roster. One thing they have desperately needed this season is defense, and more defense. They constantly have guys like Giannis going off on them. And look, Giannis is definitely going off on most teams around the league, but he's not scoring 40, 50 points, which he has done against all three meetings against Indiana this season. So I think they need a prototypical 3-and-D type of player. But if you got to remember, Og Anunoby just isn't a 3-and-D. He can guard multiple positions. He can guard power forwards. He can guard shooting guards, sometimes even point guards, and oftentimes even centers as well. So this is a player that can space the floor for them, provide a lot of spacing. I mean, have someone by Tyrese that can, really get him some more assists, if anything, and he's also obviously providing something that they're in a desire need of. Now, in terms of, the Sacramento Kings, we do have to discuss them as well, because not only is Pascal Siakam going to be a really odd fit there when we talk about Og Anunoby, similar to the Indiana Pacers, they are a team that is very high offensively powered team, and they need more defense. And Og Anunoby not only provides good impact on the defensive side, he also spaces the floor, which is something you need considering Domantas Sabonis isn't a great three-point shooter, and De'Aaron Fox, although he can hit his threes, he's not known as being a high-volume three-point shooter that can hit a lot of them, So having someone like an OG in there that can space the floor, and obviously we've seen what Keegan Murray did as well, it's going to benefit them. Let's be honest. No disrespect to Pascal. I think he's great. And I actually wouldn't think he's a bad fit with so much so with the Pacers in particular, because he can give them a scoring forward, which they can definitely use. Just in terms of the Kings, though, I think that's not something that can, they definitely want. And it'd be an odd pairing with Domantas Sabonis and Pascal. They're not strong three-point shooters, and it really crowds your, paint, which is, where DeAndre Fox really lives, at times. So I think Og Anunoby makes more sense for both teams. I do want to address the next rumor here. So let's get to the next rumor, talking about the Toronto Raptors and what they want in return for these two players. Now, there's some more news that came out about the Toronto Raptors being reported by NBA Central. Shout out to them reporting the Toronto Raptors are anticipating to target Keegan Murray from the Sacramento Kings, considering a trade involving either Pascal Siakam or Og Anunoby, according to Jake Fisher yet once again. Now, we know before yesterday's game, we were all anticipating, and I said this myself, that I don't think a trade gets done there, particularly with the Kings there, if they're not giving up Keegan Murray. But even taking a look at the Kings roster here, like, we know the Toronto Raptors value OG and Pascal very highly, but taking a look at the Kings roster, I mean, if you're not giving up Keegan Murray, which, look, I get it. He's not a big game, but even overall, just, you don't want to trade your blue chip prospect for most teams as well, considering they're both expiring contracts. But then what else are you giving us, right? Especially if you're thinking like a Pascal Siakam trade, it becomes really challenging to make up that $38 million, right? Like, you're going to have to give up key rotational pieces in Harrison Barnes, Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, maybe Trey Lyles there as well. So again, I mean, those are nice pieces, but they're not exactly the type of pieces that the Toronto Raptors would want. Even when we're discussing Og Anunoby example, Davion Mitchell has been nothing but a disappointment ever since his first season. Even this season, when De'Aaron Fox was out for many games, he had the opportunity to finally showcase that he can be a point guard. He can do more than just play defense, and he played so bad he was benched. He was put back to the bench from the starting role. That's how bad he's been this season and just overall. And he's 25 years old. Like, he's not really a prospect at this age, to be honest. And when you go down the list, like, what else is there besides Malik Monk that can, that the Kings can really offer? Malik Monk is a good player. It's also an expiring contract as well. And Kevin Huerter is a player the Kings require. So I don't really see a deal getting done there again, unless, besides, like Keegan Murray, unless they're throwing in a massive piece. I just don't see a deal happening between the Kings and the Toronto Raptors. Now let's discuss some news. That was quite surprising to a lot of people that came out yesterday talking about an Eastern Conference team that was targeting Og Anunoby. Now, this was being reported by The Athletic yesterday, and this article came out stating that teams are calling Toronto Raptors president Masai Ujiri. However, the Pistons are interested in Anunoby as a long-term fit on their wing next to Cade Cunningham, reports James Edwards 3 at The Athletic. League sources tell The Athletic that Detroit is expected to be active in the trade market over the next few weeks and are eyeing a forward. One player I'm hearing that the Pistons are interested in, as in the rest of the league, is Toronto's Og Anunoby. However, it's possible Detroit will wait to see if it can land Anunoby in the open market next summer. The two-way wing has a player option for next season, and he'll most certainly decline and avoid getting up some of its young players. Tobias Harris, who is an unrestricted free agent after the season, is another name the Pistons could target sooner rather than later if he becomes available before the NBA's free agency, or excuse me, February trade deadline. Now, this should really come as no surprise. The entire league, probably, if we're being honest, probably about 20 teams around the league would want Og Anunoby, considering what he brings to the table and just his skill sets as well. As I'll repeat myself over and over here again, it's really hard to find 3-and-D players in this league that are on, a really good contract. Yes, OG is an expiring contract and his next payday is going to be massive, but what he does for you on both ends of the floor is a skill set that every team would love to acquire. However, when you take a look at the Detroit Pistons roster here, this is a little bit more different when we talk about, compared to the Kings roster, for example. The Detroit Pistons, obviously, we know are a tanking team that have lost, I can't even count how many games in a row now. And they do have some intriguing young pieces. Now, I'm not going to throw in Cade Cunningham. That is clearly off the tables. They would not trade him. And to be honest, Detroit seems like a team that rather not trade for Og Anunoby, considering how much money they'll have to spend in the offseason as well. So again, going through some of their list of players, Jalen Duren, they're not giving up. Oscar Thompson, I don't see them giving up as well. I mean, they do have some intriguing pieces if they do want to make up the $18 million that Og Anunoby is making. Maybe throwing James Wiseman, who's, I know people are going to label a bust. I just seem like he hasn't been in the right, fit with a lot of different teams within Warriors and the Pistons this season. And there's some other guys as well. Like, Isaiah Stewart, if you want him, maybe Killian Hayes. Jaden Ivey is a name I keep hearing a lot of. He could be a point guard. Maybe the Raptors look to pair up in the future with Scotty Barnes. And just considering they don't really have a point guard coming up in their system that they can build around, in the future. So I could definitely see them targeting someone like a Jaden Ivey, but just, again, I want to be as realistic as possible when we're talking about trades and the Raptors and what a team, particularly like the Pistons, would give up. They're not giving up any of those players, except for maybe James Wiseman and some of the other role players. I don't see them giving up even Jaden Ivey as well. So again, I just don't see a deal happening there. What the Raptors are looking for, most teams will not give them, including obviously the Kings and the Pistons. But it'll be very interesting leading up to the trade deadline as we hear more and more of these rumors. Now, one last thing I want to talk about before we depart this video is one player that the Grizzlies waived today, which was quite surprising, and I think this player should be considered by the Toronto Raptors front office. Now, it was announced and shocking quite a few fan bases of even different teams that the Grizzlies have announced they're parting ways with Kenny Lofton Jr., and it was being reported that, the Grizzlies are looking to part or at least create some sort of roster space. We know Ja Morant is coming back from his 25-game suspension, and they really like Bismack Biyombo down there. And it was obviously going to be like, who are they going to part with? And to everyone's surprise, they parted with Kenny Lofton Jr. That was not a player that I was expecting to hear the Grizzlies part ways with, but this could be interesting. The Raptors, obviously, they need a guard, but they could be in the room. They could be in the market for a player like Kenny Lofton, not because of his skill set. I just think he's so young. He's 21 years old, 6'7", nearly a 7-foot wingspan, weighs an incredible 275 pounds, yet he is still a very intriguing prospect for many reasons. Let's take a look at his stats and we'll discuss more about why I think the Raptors could potentially target him. Now, taking a look at his stats here, you'll look at two different seasons in the G League. This season, he's only played 2 games, 34 minutes, 25 points, 50% from the field. 3-point shot has gone down from the previous season, only hitting about 16.7%. But again, a very small sample size, 2 games. Free throws have been incredible, 85.7%. Rebounding really well, 11.5 rebounds per game, 2 assists, but 6 turnovers per game. That is absolutely insane. And also, I forgot to mention, but 24 points is really impressive for Kenny Lofton. Again, it's just a small sample, but 24 points, 11 and a half rebounds, 2 assists is not a joke, and even in the G League, and looking at his previous season where he gives you a bigger sample size, 13 games, 55% from the field on about 17.3 field goal attempts per game. He threw out the 3-point ball a little bit more respectable last season, although I wouldn't say it's great. hitting about 32% on only 4.3 attempts per game. Free throw percentage was actually bad last year, barely hitting about 70% on 4.3 attempts. Rebounding pretty decently, 9.6 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 1.2 steals. Still, a huge turnover rate at 5.6 turnovers per game. Also fouling a lot, four fouls a game, but also was putting up an insane 25 points per game. Now, I know most people are going to look at this and say, well, you can find a lot of players in the G League that might be putting up similar stats. And the last thing the Raptors need is a forward that isn't going to space the floor, and also is, look, a power forward slash, whatever you want to call Kenny Lofton. Also considering his weight at 275 pounds. But I do want to say, when you do find 21-year-olds that are waived, and it wasn't the case of skill set. I think with the Grizzlies, it was more so that they literally did not have room. John Morant is coming back from suspension. They had to find some sort of trade, and it wasn't happening. And it looks like they're getting rid of Kenny Lofton for that reason. And also, not to mention, they do have a lot of young, intriguing pieces, young players on their roster as well, which is why they parted with Kenny Lofton. I think a team will pick him up. Now, I know people are going to say, well, you know what? He's a power forward. We need a guard. Why would we want to pick him up in a roster that already has way too many power forwards? I think you can also always try to acquire talent through whatever means necessary, right? For a team, particularly like the Raptors, they need good young talent. Why not Kenny Lofton Jr.? Yes, you have too many power forwards, but you can always initiate a trade and get a guard through trade. I don't think getting a trade through the waivers is going to be the best form of, trying to acquire something for this team for the near future. I think maybe you look to move off of Chris Boucher, maybe acquire a guard through there, maybe package him with Gary Trent Jr., try to acquire something more than just a guard and see someone, maybe a starting caliber player, depending on what you really want. But it depends. I know this Raptors team is really lacking guards, but Kenny Lofton had 44 points in his rookie season last year. I know that may not seem like much considering that was one of the games at the end of the season, but 44 points. I believe he had 12 rebounds that game too on really efficient shooting. That isn't something you see rookies do. I know the weight issue is a concern, and the Raptors system will help him adjust a little bit, but I just think anytime you get an opportunity to get Kenny Lofton, a talent like that, I'd do it. I'd do it in a heartbeat. I think it's a very unique skill set he has. I know it's people kind of make this joke about his weight, but he's a very skilled player. To be able to do what he does at 6'7", 275 pounds is no joke. So I think if you're trying to looking to acquire talent, which the Raptors have always done, and they've also always have said that it's not really a positional need when they're looking to acquire talent, you go for Kenny Lofton Jr. You can acquire trades. You don't know what's going to happen with Chris Boucher. You don't know what's going to happen with Precious Achiuwa. Maybe he gets traded for a guard as well. Maybe you look to move him, for that guard solution, or maybe to find a guard through that as well through trades. But I'm very curious to hear what you guys think about Kenny Lofton Jr. Anyways, guys, we're going to end this video off on a trivia question. So let's get into today's trivia question. And the trivia question is, who leads the Raptors in turnovers per game? Is it A, Scotty Barnes? Is it B, Og Anunoby? Is it C, Pascal Siakam? Or is it D, Drenis Shuda? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you guys have yourself a great day.